Doom the Dark Ages game director responds to Woke Ages criticisms. The difficulty sliders in Doom the Dark Ages don't just make the game easier. When Doom the Dark Ages releases later this year, the game will feature multiple sliders, allowing players to tailor the experience to their desires. For those that are new to the series or just looking for an experience that's a little calmer, these options will allow them to significantly ratchet down the difficulty. Since woke is often used as a catch-all term for things that people on the internet don't like, yeah, this has prompted some to start calling the game Woke Ages. Director Hugo Martin directly addressed concerns about the game's difficulty level in a new video. Doom the Woke Ages. I've heard about this. I've seen the videos. Well, here's the thing about first of all, I don't agree with that. Really, when you think about options like the sliders, the policy was it has to be good for both the white belts and the black belts. You know, if we're going to allow you to slow the game down, we have to enable you to speed the game up. And that was a really good policy for everything. So everything in the game, you can either make things super hard or super easy, you know, or just find that sweet spot somewhere in the middle. Martin went on to note how these slider options can be combined in unique ways in Doom the Dark Ages, where slower does not always translate to easier. In fact, some slider combinations can actually make things more challenging for players rather than easier. In the video, the director notes how members of the team have experimented with these options, including combinations where projectile speed has been greatly decreased while their strength has been increased. It really enhances that three-dimensional shmup, you know, that bullet hell experience that is kind of what classic Doom is. Classic Doom is a three-dimensional bullet hell weaving between these three slow-moving projectiles that hit really hard. And that's what creates the maze, and that's what encourages the player to move, is really the projectiles. And that's what we focus on for this game. The director compared the sliders to the equalizer on a radio. Also notes that the sliders should help give Doom the Dark Ages greater replay value, as it will encourage players to try out different methods. It's a fascinating concept, does a great job of selling a feature that's not just encouraging accessibility for less experienced players, also for those who have been through the series or been with the series from the start. Players will have to test out these sliders for themselves to see the different ways they can enhance or alter the experience. We won't have to wait much longer, as Doom the Dark Ages will release on May 15th. In my opinion, you know, when you're speaking about wokeness, if you will, wokeness for me is something catering more to the forced DEI initiative. You know, that's where I tend to gravitate more towards calling something woke, right? When you're forcing DEI initiatives into a game, and look, you guys know how I feel. I'm all about inclusivity and making everybody represented in, you know, games and stuff. But when it gets forced to a point where it feels unnatural, that's the wokeness, okay? I think there is a problem right now with everybody just wanting to call everything woke, because if it's not something that you like or not something that you agree with, you know, a lot of people are of this notion that if it's not something that you agree with, if it's not something that you find to be acceptable, it's just woke. And that's kind of cringy, honestly. You know, that's a weird notion, right? I've talked about this notion a lot of what difficulty is in games. I have a pretty definitive stance on it. I like hard games. I play almost every game I play on the hardest difficulty that the game will give me, outside of significant handicaps, right? Like, I'm not going to go through a game for my first playthrough and get rid of all my checkpoints, or, you know, only, you know, play on a hardcore mode where I die and have to restart or something, you know, like. But difficulty options, if there is one, I'm almost always going to go for the hardest natural difficulty to impose the largest challenge on myself that I can, because I enjoy that. And for myself, you know, there's always been this big kind of debate in the industry, especially since the Soulsborne games have come into prominence in the industry, because they don't have difficulty sliders, they don't have difficulty options. There's always been, you know, especially since that time, this debate about should they have difficulty sliders, should they have difficulty selectors or options, and obviously From Software says no, and I respect that. There are a lot of people that don't agree with that, because they go, well, what if I don't like a hard game and I just want to, you know, enjoy the experience. I want to be able to experience that universe, but I'm not a real good game player and I can't enjoy the experience because I'm not good at that kind of game. And so as far as From Software is concerned, they're like, well, sorry, it is what it is, because this is our art form and this is the way we want it to be. Right? And so they've stuck to their guns, if you will, about that notion. And I respect the crap out of that. It's their art. They're creating it the way they want to. What they're saying is part of their software's core element is it's difficult. If you want to succeed in their games, get ready for a struggle in many different facets and areas of what that experience is. So From Software has stuck to that notion, and I respect it, because that's what they want it to be. And if you can't get good, you won't get to experience it. That's just what it is, right? Now, the unfortunate thing here is, do you think that people would call From Software woke because they don't include difficulty sliders, right? So now you've got a game like Doom, and look, let's be fair. There's definitely a reason for having difficulty options and difficulty sliders in a game, because we have a lot of people in the world that do need accessibility options for gaming. They want to experience the same games that everybody else does, but they're limited in their ability to play games the same way, whether it be a wide range of physical disabilities or mental disabilities, right? And so a lot of developers do look at difficulty options as accessibility options. And you've got to try and address this from all angles. Again, I respect From Software's stance and the way they approach this very, very much. Part of that is because I like hard games, but I also am going to understand where ID Software is coming from with this Doom notion, and I'm not going to call them woke for it. Am I going to play that game and crank down the difficulty? No, I'm going to crank up the difficulty as much as I can, you know? But just because a company creates a game with difficulty options does not make them woke. Games have had difficulty sliders and difficulty selectors forever. Okay? And if that's the only thing that's going on here, is that they're incorporating difficulty options for people to be able to play the game at whatever is appropriate for their level of and ability of game playing expertise, right? Then, and the developer of the game is okay with that, obviously, by incorporating it. Why does that make them woke? It's their art. This has been going on forever. Now all of a sudden it's a woke practice? That doesn't make any sense. It is a weird thing, I think, that, you know, everybody just wants to automatically chunk everything into this woke basket. It's a weird thing, you know. And again, I mean, I'm somebody that plays games on the hardest difficulty all the time. But I'm understanding of developers having different viewpoints of the way that they want to create their games for their fan base and for their consumer base. To an extent. Because I do have limits to, you know, what I will call things woke. I do have a limit to it. I will see when things start getting nasty with forced DEI narrative bullcrap being shoved down people's throats, and that's where, for me, it does start turning into what feels like a wokeness situation, right? But just having difficulty options is woke now? That feels weird, man. Why? Somebody explain it to me. Explain it to me.